Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics. Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Fred Schenkelberg.
And good morning. This is Greg Hutchins.
Hey, Greg. It's odd. We don't typically, when I record, I almost never use the video, but it adds another dimension that I have to actually look at the camera, so it looks like I'm making eye contact with another detail to deal with. I think it was last week, ASQ sent out, I think for their conference for next year, their World Quality Congress, that said, here's kind of, I think 3 or 4 different major themes. And one of them was supply chain. And I read that one and I went, isn't this like a couple of years too late? And even better if it would have been 4 years ago, as how to build a resilient supply chain, and starting to say, this is, the evidence of increased international isolation and barriers. And, the tariffs were coming on well before the pandemic shut down all these shipping lanes and factories and everything else. There were plenty of hints that there were cracks in the supply chains, the way we were optimizing them 5 years ago. And the question I had, though, is not specific just to ASQ. It's the Society of Mechanical Engineers, or the Royal Society of Botanists or whoever. What is prerogative the right word or role or what there any of these organizations are in a unique position to set the agenda? It's through their magazines and what papers they publish and which research they promote, which areas they encourage. And here ASQ is saying, hey, we need to look at supply chain issues, which is, in my opinion, late, but that's just my opinion. And there's plenty of room for improvement even now, so I don't think it's a bad thing. But it's what role does the professional societies have in guiding the evolution and improvement of their particular discipline?
Great question. So a couple of years ago, we wrote a book saying, with the title, The Rules Have Changed. And I think basically the rules of engagement, if you'll excuse that metaphor, for professional societies, for professions, for almost everything, have changed. Mm-hmm. Globalization, AI, COVID, lots of reasons for that. But we're seeing a whole bunch of perturbations, volatility. God, I haven't used that word since SAT. I don't know if I use those big words with you. I guess I'm just in the presence of a word guru.
Oh, no. We've got a great audience. They get all this stuff. It's fine. I get that all the time on the blog, all the authors and stuff. I look at the readability score, and then you go online and says, well, what should a blog be at? And it's like 3rd grade level. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong audience here. So anyway, I digress.
I think the role of a professional society is changing. American Medical Association has lost 50% of their members. ASQ has lost, 50, 60%. You're seeing that in all the societies. Right now, every professional society has 2 big requirements: membership attraction, membership retention. So, quick story. A number of years ago, 5 of us set up a little ad hoc company to provide professional development to societies. So we had 12 societies we were doing professional development on. So the basic idea, there was 5 of us. We had about 12 societies, everything from PMI, Project Management Institute, to the American Institute of Physics. We had a bunch of them, 12 of them, and we did all of their professional development. So one of us, and there were 5 of us, one of us would rotate.
So is this professional development of the staff of those societies or of the members of that society?
Of the members. Okay. That's the critical question. Exactly.
Yep.
So one of us would fly out on a Friday night, take a red eye, and Saturday morning we would give a talk all day pro bono. The only thing we would ask for is transportation subsidies, and we'd give a talk on the future of the profession. And we did it for IEEE. We did it for everybody. And basically, that became the basis for our working at projects, our working at books.
Mm-hmm.
Until about 10 years ago. And what happens is the societies started losing members. And the societies that usually would have American in their title, like American Society for Quality, ASQ, became the acronym ASQ. American Society for Mechanical Engineers simply became ASME. Why? Because they realized they had a global membership and a global following. When they did their studies, their internal studies for membership attraction and retention, they discovered that the number one issue that people became members of societies was career development. In the meantime, they'd outsourced their crown jewels to us. And that became a cause of concern. The societies before that were happy to basically have us pro bono do these because education, professional development was a cost center, not a revenue center. So they were very happy until they realized that their two critical issues, retention and attraction, they'd outsourced to us. So they took all of them back internally. So now, 10 years later, the societies are seeing the same problem. Participation, membership is diminishing, and how can they get more members?
Well, I think they're asking the wrong question. That's, is how can I be of service to the people we're trying to serve if they're not actually attracting somebody with a billboard or a Super Bowl ad so they feel compelled to sign up because of all these promises of, career development and internet networking and all the other good stuff. If they don't actually deliver that, I'm not going to renew that membership, and if word gets out, they just want your money. It's like, why bother? If I can go to the library and get every IEEE conference paper for free, through my organization's library contacts, what do I need a membership for? And then what's even more infuriating, you sign up for IEEE and I'm in the reliability division, and I can only get access to content that's just in the reliability domain. The electrical engineering stuff that I really need to know about is I have to pay extra to be in that club. And I'm like, you're nickel and diming me to death here and not actually helping. Come on.
So that begs the question, what is the fundamental value add for a professional society? Let's take IEEE.
Well, I go way back to the Royal Societies. It was a way for the people interested in the same topic to get around the table and talk about it and share their knowledge. I don't think that fundamentally has changed for many, many professional societies because they do conferences and they do networking events and they do evening meetings or variations of those things. And it's a way for peers to share what they know with each other and critique and build on their knowledge. I think at its core, that's what they're for. And what's changed around them is how we communicate.
But yes, and now we can do that via Zoom.
Yeah, or we can do it on a Google search and find the information we're looking for.
Absolutely.
But so I think the value add, what societies really can do, I don't know that it's ever really, I don't know of a society that I can point to that is really taking it on their own to do this, is to provide a guidance, is to provide, here's the best practices, here's the evolution of it, but the hard part is that it usually involves a committee, and then that doesn't usually make much of an evolutionary step.
Well, talking about decision making, I've been involved in a lot of committees, and very seldom do I see breakthrough decision making. Often, unfortunately, it's the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a catch-22 for the boards and the senior management teams of these societies. They got bills to pay. They got a staff they got to support. They got to get articles for their next newsletter, or they got a conference coming up they need to plan for and organize. And it's just the day-to-day type stuff, And I've seen some trade magazines on occasion will, saying, all right, some of it is their advertisers are saying, "Hey, we want to use these tools," and then they post and publish and promote a bunch of content that says, "Oh, here's a direction to go," that happens to be using our main contributor, our main advertisers' approach and products. But some of them do a genuine job of saying, "No, this is a good way to think about this." Sometimes editors have a unique view of a body of knowledge and saying, this is the trend, and I'm going to reinforce this direction. And it's by what articles they publish, what topics they do, who they recruit to write for them, stuff like that. But I don't see it in the professional societies all too often. It's oftentimes what I've seen over the years is whatever they can get. Who's willing to give us content, and then we'll publish it. And if they get enough contributions, then they can be more selective. But by and large, if you sent an article to a professional society's magazine, it's, if you ran it through a spell checker, they're probably going to publish it.
Yes. So that begs the question, what's the future of these professional societies, whether it's IEEE or ASQ?
Well, there's still the need for people to have formats and forums and frameworks for them to share information, right? LinkedIn and ResearchGate are probably going to replace professional societies. I mean, there's a massive online discussion forum on LinkedIn for just about any discipline you can think of. Why do I need to go to a conference? I got 1,000 people here I can ask a question to, and I can get an answer pretty quick, or I can share a paper and get comments and feedback on it right away. Why do I need to wait for the once a year event and pay to be on the list that even gets notified when it's coming up?
So are you saying that
they're going to continue to fade? They're going to go away. They're not fulfilling their primary role in today's environment.
That's harsh, Fred. That's harsh.
Yeah, I've been saying it for years, though.
Oh, golly.
Well, they're in the mud. Dinosaur is a good analogy. They're walking up into the tar pits. Some of them are stuck already. And unless they change dramatically and actually add value to the discussion, and one idea is to provide guidance, what's the evolution of this discipline, then that's great. Or what prevents, like ASQ, they are talking about supply chain and quality type stuff. Well, why can't they pull together and pay 5 or 6 of the top supply chain quality gurus or teams and come up with a plan to actually make improvements? Or here's a framework, or here's a paper, or here's a white paper, here's a study, whatever. But I don't see ASQ funding research very often. And the same with IEEE and everybody else, is why they're in a unique position to gather the right people in the room and move forward. But I don't see them doing that.
IEEE sometimes will develop standards committees.
It's a circle to the bottom of the drain. It's the committee that hashes out what my company is willing to accept. It's like, no, it's not forward looking at all.
No. And unfortunately, there are a lot of committees. I mean, a lot of professional societies that are in that same bucket. It might be a race to the bottom, as you say. I don't want to.
Well, we've talked about it before. I know on our regular conversations and maybe even on the show, is that now the way people work and communicate, and the way people look for and gather information, the way people go about getting professional development, fundamentally hasn't changed, except that we have communication tools that make it instant. If I need to find a formula for a particular failure mechanism, I just Google it. I mean, I just look it up online, and I can probably find 8 or 9 references in a few seconds that are viable. And sometimes I need to go to a library to get the actual document, or write to the author and get the details. But I can reach out. I can contact the author of a paper that's behind some paywall someplace. And 9 times out of 10, they respond because you're interested in their work, and they'll give you a copy of it. And it's like, why do I need a membership that's promising networking that doesn't facilitate being able to network in today's dynamic role?
Got a quick story. So a bunch of years ago, not too many years ago, I was on the board of PMI, Project Management Institute. At that time, we had 32,000 members, and we were interviewing a new executive director. And we had basically a couple finalists. One was an admiral, retired admiral from the Navy, and he had all the polish, the gravitas. He had presence. And then there was another person there who at best was a milquetoast, unassuming, shy, looked at his shoes, very uncomfortable in a group of people. So we had two people there, Mr. Gravitas, the U.S. Navy Admiral retired, and Mr. Milquetoast. And of course, I went with the guy with gravitas. The other guy essentially, and the selection committee for the board voted for the other guy. So I saw my future with leadership with the PMI being out the door because I didn't didn't choose the other guy. Anyway, this other guy was very interesting. He was essentially the smartest person I've ever seen in a professional society, even though he did not exude what we would consider leadership qualities. Wisdom, spoke well, was extroverted, was smart, had the right quip. None of that. He was opposite, but what he had was vision. And what he said about project management was, we at PMI at that time, which were all domestic, we're going to basically internationalize. We're going to become global. That was his first aha moment, for us at least. The second thing, 2 years later, he said, all work is going to be projectized. Great. And he was right. All work became global because of globalization, and all work, whether we're a gig worker working in a company or factory, is going to become projectized. He took membership from 32,000 up to 500,000. At that time, this unknown cert called Project Management Professional went from 0 to, I think, over 1 million now, 1,000,000 to 1,300,000 certifications. And it's a requirement in a lot of jobs now.
Yep.
And he was an outsider, totally. He came outside, went into PMI, and made it global. Smartest guy in the room that I've seen. So maybe some of these societies can attract what I would call that type of forward-looking person, but they're hard to come by.
Yeah, and they got to execute on it. The PMI could have just said, "All right, we don't accept that, and you're out of here."
Well, it's interesting. The way they executed was, again, counterintuitive. At that time, the society would give everything out free. He hired 3 lawyers, put a trademark on everything, and put a copyright on everything, and basically said, if you use any of our material, you're infringing. Yeah. If you infringe, you're going to get a demand letter. Our next conversation will be with you and a lawyer in court.
See, I have trouble with it and people contribute stuff to these organizations and sign away their copyright. And that's a choice you can make. But they're a publishing house at that point, and they're taking over the content. And you get your name on the byline, but they got the value, especially if they're going to protect it.
And that's what PMI largely initiated years ago. And the guy was brilliant. I would say out of the 100 leaders I've met in various societies, a dozen of them, smartest guy in the room.
Right. It takes, but I don't think that models can continue to work where because I see that even with Wiley, they want to publish my book, and I'm like, do you want will you release the copyright to me? Well, hell no. That's our business model. And I'm like, well, then hell no, you can't have it. It's like,
well, the publishers now have a very, again, counterintuitive model. The authors retain the copyright, but the authors are forced to give back the copyright to the publisher.
Yeah, no, we don't need these gatekeepers. if that's what they want to play the role of anymore, is we don't need the gatekeepers. Now, there is a role for good editors and for good people that can put together the information and create information, right? I have a problem with the professional societies that the only content they get is gifted to them, and it's by chance. So there's one, and part of I'm jaded on this because I know that the RAMS committee, the Reliability and Maintenance Symposium, every year sets a theme, and every year they get maybe one paper related to the theme. So if you see the tagline on the conference for this year, and it's on our artificial intelligence adopted and blah, 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 and you go there hoping to learn a whole lot about artificial intelligence and blah, 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 there's nothing there. The committee doesn't go out and create or encourage people to write on those topics. You write on whatever you want, and they'll publish it because they don't get enough submissions. And they might get one or two people that actually try to follow the guidance of what the theme is. But then other than that, they don't talk about the theme. And they get keynote speakers that pretty much can talk about whatever they want and not on the theme. And I was like, well, that's a missed opportunity. That's a role the conference can play in guiding and, in evolving the discipline. And they talk it like they're going to, but then they don't execute on it. So I see that with professional societies too, is I think they're missing the opportunity. They don't have the visionaries, right? Not for the business model, I think for the good of their society, the people in the society, the profession. I think the business model will work itself out separate, but if you take care of your profession, of the professionals in your profession. That's just me.
Well, I'll leave with a thought. I agree. The gatekeepers have changed. The gatekeepers with gravitas used to be consultants, thought leaders, people who written books, people who get on the circuits, the media circuit. Now we have an equivalent of influencers. For example, Ascendo, your platform, and you are influencers.
Oh, I just heard a story yesterday is that the White House invited a whole bunch of TikTok influencers to the signing of some bill, and hope they talk about it because they want to reach that audience that's on TikTok.
Yeah. And you have your audience and reliability.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's something I need to, put my money where my mouth is and I know through the webinars and through some of the papers, it's conversations about where should we be going versus what are we doing? But there's still a pretty good chunk of our audience is looking for, the basic how-to. What's the difference between A and B methods? Or what is this method? How do I do this analysis? So there's a mix of those things, but I think there is a role for the site to say, all right, this is the way we need to think about what we do. And this is a, technique to improve your career and your influence and your abilities, not just here's a case study of what we thought went well.
Well, our previous podcast was all about deciding how to decide.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. Well, that's part of it. I think the work Carl and I have been doing is intended to outline a way that we can do things better and to break it down in a way that can be taught and absorbed and learned. And so that's part of it. But I've been after MTBF for years, was to just get rid of it. So that's a negative. I'm trying to get rid of the bad chafe that's cluttering our world and focus on what's good. So in some regard, we've been trying to do that, but I really need to focus on it some more. And, but that's for this afternoon's project. So we'll work on it later.
I think there's going to be a role if we assume that everything is going to be disrupted, like we said, the rules have changed.
Yep.
Then they're going to be what we would call preeminent, overarching voices, thought leaders in every profession. and we'd basically need guides to take us from here to there. And you
Yeah.
may be the guide in quality and reliability.
Well, I don't know about that. But, I like talking about this stuff, so that might be part of it. Got a bit of experience. So anyway, if you're listening to this, and if you are a big fan of the professional societies, they add a lot of value for you and stuff, let us know. I may be completely off base, out of touch with this. On the other hand, if you're not happy with what they're doing, what do you see? What's going wrong in your view of this thing, and what's going to replace it? If you're listening to this podcast, you care about professional development and continuing to learn and so on. Thanks for doing that and listening to the podcast. It's one of many outlets for you to do this kind of just ad hoc learning and awareness and all those things. What other techniques do you use? What other places do you go to network and to learn and so on? Let us know. Head over to ascendoreliability.com/go/SOR. A couple ways you can get in touch with us there. Greg and I are available along with the other hosts on LinkedIn and our about pages on the site. And we really do look forward to hearing from you. So with that, Greg, I think we'll head off into the rest of the day that we've got laid out in front of us and enjoy it. Maybe make a difference.
Absolutely. Have a great one. Thanks, Fred.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.